scripted type stuff.
And how?
All right, so I'm out of Virginia. What about you, Ray? Where are you?
I'm just on the edge of London, to the
Ah,
to the northwest, about 30 minutes on by the train to get into central London.
is what's it's blistering cold here, and we've had snow and some
Yeah.
wicked wind. We had wind overnight, Ray. That was it was crazy. That it was
Oh
shaking the
yeah.
house. Lots of power outages and all sorts of things. Do you guys get
Oh,
weather like that over there? Or?
not as fierce, I think, as some of the tornadoes and hurricanes that you guys get. Occasionally, but there's a lot of flooding in England because
Yeah,
it's very wet. So there's a lot of parts of the country that are often flooded. It's annoying for the people that live there.
we're probably I think it was 100-year flood that was in Asheville, which is about 4 hours south of us, and
Oh
then we had
wow.
some significant flooding. A few hours southeast of us, or
Yep.
southwest, more out toward Kentucky. There was some more significant flooding here over the weekend as well. But
Right.
we went from a storm, a snowstorm, into some just significant rain. So our ground was really saturated, and it was hard to hold water. So we've been under a flood warning for seems like a week,
Oh my.
and then the winds kicked off last night, man. So it was. I
Gosh.
think we're finally out of that, and then just some regular cold weather for a few days.
Gosh. Do you have kids?
Yeah, yeah, I got teenagers. My daughter will be
Okay.
13 next month, but yeah, they're both in school. Um, so even here, like the power outages affected a couple of the schools as
Yeah. Of
well.
course. Of course. Gosh. Oh
What
wow.
about what about yourself? Do you have kids?
I don't of my own, but my
Yeah.
partner Carolyn has three children, all grown up, but I don't have any of my own.
Yeah, let me tell everybody who I'm talking to, and then I'll just kick off with a day in your life, man, and we'll
Okay.
see where it takes us. But folks, today on Second Chance Podcast, I'm with Ray Martin, award-winning entrepreneur, business leader, who faced profound personal loss that led him to embark on a transformative 14-year global journey. In his book, Life Without a Tie, he shares how unforeseen events guided him to strength, his inner guidance, deepened his humanity, and forge an authentic path, man. And that's a lot kind of rolled into one there. Probably a
It
whole
is.
lot of lessons learned, Ray.
It is. It is. In fact, when I wrote the book, which I never intended to do, like I left England in 2005 to go on what I really had planned as a 6 month sabbatical. That was the idea because I had had some really difficult personal events happen and was broken. I was on the floor, really distraught, basically. And and so I left for 6 months, but it didn't go according to plan. Things happened that I could never have imagined, and it ended up being 14 years. And during that period, especially in the first 3 or 4 years, when I started meeting travellers who were also moving around, and they asked me what I was doing and how long I'd be doing it, and I told them, they all sort of said, or a lot of them said, not all of them, but a lot of them said, "Can I give you my email address? Because one day, if you ever write a book about this, I'd be really interested to read it." And I used to laugh, Jeff, because I had no intention of writing a book. I wasn't a writer. I said, I'm never going to write a book, most likely, but I'll take your address just in case. And when it got to about 100 people that had given me their email addresses, I thought, okay, I've got the message. Someone up there wants me to write a book. I'm going to do it, and so I got on with it then. Um, yeah, that's how
What's
it was.
Tell us, give us a little bit of insight of that story that where the book is born out of.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to capture some of the things that happened to me when I sort of left what I would call a conventional life, a mainstream life. I was CEO of a company I founded. I was in my early 40s. I followed all the guidance and instructions I'd received at school. Get a good job, get a good education, get a wife, get a house. I'd just been unquestionably following that default plan. And whilst I had achieved, you know, external recognition for doing that, I won this Business Leader of the Year award in England from the Daily Telegraph. So I had a lot of recognition for what I'd done. Inside myself, I never felt really happy about it. I felt that being a CEO of a company wasn't really my thing. It was a weird thing. I can only describe it as feeling like I was living someone else's life. It wasn't truly mine, even though I was quite competent. And I was working with my wife, who was my business partner, so I was really happy that I was supporting her as well through doing it. And then one day after about 10 years, when we got the company to a really successful place, she came back from a meeting and suddenly said, I'm leaving you and I'm leaving the company. I mean, I just didn't see it coming, Jeff. It was one of the worst moments of my life when she told me that. I felt really devastated. And then very shortly afterwards, within days, my father got very ill and he eventually passed away. And so within 4 or 5 months, I was leaving my home. I was out of my business. My dad had gone. I was breaking up my marriage. I just felt like my whole life had imploded. And it was hard, you know. I've never had to experience anything like as painful as that in my life. So it was tough. I was really psychologically all over the place.
Yeah. What age are you at here, Ray? Just
At that age, I was like 43,
Yeah.
44 by the time we finalised the actual divorce.
To just kind of speak to that, at 43, you've learned a lot. You've done
Yep.
things. There's
Yep.
normalcy. There's all these. You have your CEO of this company, and so
Yep.
sounds like you're totally blindsided, man. So
It was it was like a shock. It was an eye opener, and whilst it was feeling really lousy, a much deeper intelligence within me kind of knew it was okay. It's like it's hard to describe that place, but it was a sense I had that deep inside my core there was an okayness with everything that was happening, and if it had a voice, it would be saying to me, "This might look really crappy at the moment, but trust this because this is for your good. You know, there's something good's going to come out of this." I never actually would have believed it if I'd heard it in that clear terms, but it was
Ray, let me ask you this because
yeah.
I've been there, right? And
Okay.
here's what here's me was it's easier, a little bit easier for me to say that now looking back. It was there in the moment,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to listen to it. I thought it was where I was in the worst place. I'm like, there's no
Right.
way anything good's coming out of this. Absolutely not. This is horrible.
Yeah.
Only to learn later in life, it's the best things that happen to
Yeah.
you.
It was kind of like that, and so that was the beginning of a switch in navigation systems that I used for my life. So in the old days, when I was a CEO and a businessman, all my navigation was done by planning. Goals and targets were set in a plan, and that was the action that got done. And everything got achieved in that plan at the expense of anything else just being pushed to the sides. And it was like such a focus on these goals and targets being achieved, which was serving me well financially. So I don't want to say it was terrible, but it made life much narrower than I sort of felt I wanted to experience it. And I missed a lot of stuff in life. I missed a lot of friends, a lot of birthday parties and events that I would have gone to if I hadn't been working all the time and stuff like that. So it gave me a chance to really sit down and deeply reflect, you know, what do I really want for the next phase? And you might have heard of this book. I came across a book at the time called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. And she's a hospice nurse in Australia. She's become very famous from this book. And she said she interviews people in the last days and weeks of their life. And she asks them all the same question. The question is, what do you most regret about your life? And she said, I've asked thousands of people that. They all say the same 5 things, Jeff. Never, it doesn't matter whether they were a millionaire or a janitor. It doesn't matter. Always the same 5 things. And the number one regret that everyone had was I wished I'd lived my life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. And number 2 was I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3 was I wish I'd stayed in touch with good friends who I let drift away because I was always too busy. And if you're interested, the last 2 were I wished I'd expressed my feelings more and I wished I'd allowed myself to be happier, which means I was never content with what I had.
Yeah.
I
heard that one later in. Gosh, I keep drawing a blank on. I was listening to him speak, and he layers in time.
Right.
He goes, "You never hear a dying man ask for his money. You always hear him ask for his
Oh yeah,
time."
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I wish I'd spent more hours at the office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had. Can you put my money in here with me? And as money,
Yeah.
actually help them probably have a good quality of life.
Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things is
Yeah.
people always are asking for more time. I think listen, man. you're hitting my bestseller list of people that get recommended books. I'm like, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a really great book. Thank you for sharing that with me along this
yeah.
story with yours. What was your just fill in some gaps because my
Mm,
own curiosity. I'll end up calling you in the middle of the night and saying, hey, tell me this.
that's all right.
What was the work? What was kind of work was you doing
I
at
my
your see when you were CEO of your company? What was your
Yeah, well, the company was a provider of leadership development, coaching, and training services to corporate entities like
yeah
banks, insurance companies, etc. So we were engaged with a number of different blue chip companies of providing those services to essentially improve the culture, improve performance, just make things work better with the
yeah
people in mind. And my desire to do that came from my earlier career where I was working with the clients and doing the change stuff, etc. But the more I got involved as the business grew, the further I became divorced from the actual delivery of our service. And I was inevitably basically selling. I was meeting clients, I was creating client relationships, dining, wining, getting contracts, having to find revenue to keep the ever growing company fed with enough money to pay all the salaries and all the pressures that that kind of role brings. So I was really the generator of the clients. Really, I think was my main role, and the ambassador for the company in the public domain because I spoke at conferences and promoted what we were doing and wrote papers about it and just generated interest in the marketplace because this was even before the internet we
yeah
started the business, so we didn't have social media or any of those stuff we have today. You had to do all this
yeah.
by
You're a Yellow Pages guy.
yeah, it literally had to
Or
do.
what was it in the UK or
Yeah, it
England? What
was
was
yellow pages, exactly
yeah?
the
It's the
same.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of this you was done in real life, in the real events and live events and stuff like this, and people read like if you wanted to be noticed, you had to get an article in British Airways in-flight magazine. That was the place that it was called High Life, I think it was, and all business people read High Life magazine.
Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. And to get in those publications was a big deal.
It was bloody impossible. That's why if you won an award or something, which I did, it was easier, but it was still hard.
What took you? What created that company? What passion or what of you? You mentioned a project you were on before, working customer facing. Was that
Yeah.
a post college or post university type thing that you started, or was it
Yeah,
was?
yeah, it was. I was very fortunate when I was in my late teens, 19, 20. I met a group of very enlightened and progressive people who were very ambitious to do something that would transform society and have a big social impact, not just make money. And so we decided to start Britain's first ever telephone marketing agency
Wow.
and use the power of communication to transform people's lives, not just generate business, but to actually make people's daily life better. And so we developed this business over 10 years and it was fantastically successful, won lots of awards. It got sold to a much bigger company and everyone benefited from the sale. And I realized in that journey that I still had a lot I wanted to do around the people stuff that hadn't come to fruition. And like when you're working in a much bigger organization, you see things that you think, if I'm honest, you see things that you think, if I was doing this myself, we could do this a lot better. We could do it to a much higher standard. We could focus on, the company that we do and offer good service, but there's a lot of it that doesn't really work in now. And there's a lot we can improve if we take this out on our own. And so me and my ex-wife teamed up and we decided to start our own company. We developed a platform called Heart and Soul Management, which was a philosophy that you could implement these 8 practices and these 8 principles to get the most out of a team, most aligned, most energy, most performance. And we showed leaders and managers how to implement it in their business and make it accountable to see really tangible performance improvements coming from it.
Yeah.
And it worked really well. Yeah, we got some really good clients and we got some brilliant financial results for them. And people were sort of knocking on our door asking us to help them. So it was good. It was a really good business.
What kind of time year wise are you talking about
Oh,
there?
this was in the late 90s
Yeah.
and
So
right through to the early 2000s.
yeah, so we're talking born in the internet age.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
just as
something you, yeah, you had to.
yeah,
So just I like to include that because my most of my audience comes from probably in that 35 to 45 year
Okay.
old range.
Yeah.
So if we're you and I, more so you, because I'm just joking. But we come into an age to where we we were our lives were changed. Not you didn't just born into the internet world, or like we had to adapt our business. We had to
We did.
adapt
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, we had to move from paper advertising to internet advertising. So when I tell everyone that because we're not talking about so everyone kind of knows where we were technology wise as
Yeah.
a just as a world, things that we were using, things that we were having to adapt. So it's a different time for
Yeah.
leadership and reach. So I guess what I'm trying to qualify for us here, Ray, is when you say you have a significant impact company, this is born off traditional, what would be what we call all offline marketing, and probably a significant referral program, things along those lines
Yeah.
that where word of mouth is a big deal. You're in magazines, you're on billboards, you're in different areas versus somebody
Mm.
just being able to type into a search engine and find you guys.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, it's so utterly different now. I work
Yeah.
as an associate for a couple of companies that are leaders in the field, and I'm proud to be associated with them. But they've got really, really skillful marketing people doing all of the online stuff and social media, and it's so slick. It's brilliant. It's really, really much
It's
better.
entertainment based now.
Yeah,
And
it's
our
super
old
good.
ads used to be funny. You remember the magazine ad that would get a chuckle out of
Yeah,
you, or something that would be captivating. It was more memorable. But now we can bring those to life.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've been playing with AI music, and
All
you want to
right,
talk about transforming a company is just taking and inserting their name, and AI generates all the stuff.
right.
They it gives you all things, but then when you enter and when you bring the company into what sounds like a top 40 hit, and they're like they turn and look, how did we get in here? Who recorded this? So
Right.
things that we could never have done, you know, 5 years ago, much
Yeah,
less back
yeah.
in, when you're late
So
90s. It's
you're a musician too?
no, I'm using an app, Ray.
Okay,
It's an AI app that generates the music. So
okay.
the creative side of me, like I have a pretty unique client that I work with, and we're in the transportation industry with trailers. So I created a jingle for the business and I sent it to the owner, and he was like, who recorded this? Yeah, I was like, this is all AI generated, so you can have
Wow.
very mainstream sounding music. So what I did was I cut a kind of an album of greatest hits, but I used, and when I teach marketing now, I use the feeling, the outcome, how
Okay.
someone's doing it. So I had the character come to life of, the end user, but it mentions using our product. It's kind of what
Right.
I did. So I use product placement in the thing. So it's pretty cool the stuff that we can do with AI and
Yeah,
how
amazing.
your business is born out of a phone book, and then we moved to online, and how you're just in your lifetime and mine as well of how
Mm.
cool it is to see the evolution of just technology.
Yeah, and it's only just started, isn't it, AI? It's got
Yeah.
such a long way to go. There's so much yet we haven't seen. It's hard to
What do you
imagine.
think? What was the like when you get into blindsided by your wife and business partner there? What was it down? Where'd the backslide start there? Do you know now, looking back on it, or
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, looking back, I think it was inevitable that we would split because I feel like we came together to do this thing, this project. That we had a shared vision for a project, and after that, we sort of started to see that we had quite different ideas about what our future vision would be like. For me, I was always interested in being free, being able to go out into the world and have experiences and travel and do all sorts of things like that. And she had a different set of pictures and ideas. So it wasn't anything malicious. It was just a really big difference in how the future looked, and we could never really talk about it enough and come to terms with it. It just sat in the background, never being addressed fully. And I think if I look back now, I think I probably would have if I knew then what I know now about taking ownership
Yeah.
and proactively dealing with things like that, I would have taken a different stance. But I didn't have the courage or the understanding that I do now. So it kind of blew up. It just blew
It took
up.
the moment. Like, listen, it took the event to give you the courage, though,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. So I had the courage to act on it afterwards, but I knew it was, it was something we weren't really addressing, or I wasn't, not we. I used to think, I wrote about this in the book. I used to say I used to think I hoped it would all blow over and somehow be different without me doing anything, but I realised afterwards it was never going to be different without me doing anything new or different. So
It's hard to
that's how it
have
was.
difficult conversations when you're still learning yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I chose for the introduction to the book the story of Gandhi and the boy eating sweets. I don't know if you know it. It's a lovely anecdote. Can I tell you it?
Summary. Yeah, summary. Tell me.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very short story. In India in the 30s, there's a woman who's got a 10-year-old boy who's not very, not very healthy because he's eating a lot of sweets. So she thinks, I'll take him to see Gandhi, and Gandhi will tell my boy to stop eating the sweets, and he'll stop. So she walks about 2 hours in the hot sun to Gandhi's ashram, stands in front of him, and says, "Mr. Gandhi, would you tell my boy to stop eating sweets? He's not doing his health any good, and he won't stop." And Gandhi looks at the boy, he looks back at her, and says, "Madam, bring him back in 2 weeks, and I'll speak to him for you." She's very confused and thinks, that's a bit odd, but he's Gandhi, so she walks 2 hours back home, comes back 2 weeks later, puts him in front of Gandhi, and he says to the boy, "Boy, I want you to stop eating sweets." And the boy says, "Okay, Mr. Gandhi, I'll stop." And so the woman says, "Look, Mr. Gandhi, if you don't mind me asking, why couldn't you have just said that to the boy 2 weeks ago when we were here?" And he looked at her and smiled and said, "Because, madam, 2 weeks ago I was still eating sweets." So, it's a great story, and that's exactly what it was like for me, and that's partly what gave me the momentum to go out into the world to seek for new insight and new understanding on the back of those events, because I knew I knew I was ignorant about some things, but I didn't know what. And I don't mean ignorant being like stupid. I mean ignorant,
Yeah.
just not seeing. That's the definition of ignorant.
Ray, was you? Let's talk about your upbringing and coming up. Mom
Yeah.
and dad in the picture. Good stability.
Yeah, very
Um,
very loving parents.
yeah,
working class.
yeah,
Did manual jobs and just got me and my brother, into good schools and did everything they could to give us. They were
yeah.
from very poor backgrounds, but they just did the best they could for us. Yeah.
I think it's all of us, right? Saying like normalcy.
Yep.
So there's not a lot of, out of that sometimes is you don't have you got to experience the moments to have the somewhere along the lines you either got to witness it happen,
Mm.
someone's life self-destruct in front of you that you were able to stop and say, well, wait a minute, I need to be in control of this, I need to get ahead of it, or you're going to experience it yourself. And I think
Yeah.
it's hard. The lesson has to come from somewhere. I remember, I da- I had other relationships prior to meeting my wife. Hope she doesn't listen to this episode. No, I'm just kidding. But like I fell short in a lot of relationships. But by the time I'm where I'm at now, man, I know to have those conversations, and I
Yeah.
know when I'm not, when something's going on or the uncertainties. I grew as a person.
Yeah.
Right?
I know
Do
what you
you
mean.
do you see that in your story, Ray?
Totally do, Jeff. I mean,
Yeah.
that I've done a lot of introspection. I've done a lot of work, done a lot of workshops and been through quite a lot of shared learning experiences with other men and groups to understand myself. I've got a meditation practice which gives me a lot of insight. And now I'm in a relationship for the last 18 months with a lovely lady in England, and I feel like I can take full ownership for the kind of way I want to show up and the kind of truthful and honest and open relationship I want, and generate the conversations that create that. And it's not easy, but I feel like I can do it, and I feel much happier about who I am and proud of how I'm doing that now.
Too many people. I've learned this. Not everybody is going to sit down on the podcast and have this conversation because
No.
It's hard to talk about your shortcomings. It's hard to talk about your failures.
Well,
It's
especially
hard.
if you work in, like as I do, as a leadership coach, because
Yeah.
it's what you supposedly know to share with others, So, but I find as a coach, the more I talk to coaches, we're all in our twin journey. We're helping others whilst we're working on our own stuff. We're doing it simultaneously, and
Yeah.
that's how we know how to be valuable, because we know what it feels like to be in these dilemmas. We know it.
Yeah. I think you're spot on there with yeah, and you hate to learn that lesson at the expense of probably a business and a relationship, but that's where
Mm.
you were.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's just, I mean, it's not like we can press pause and change your situation. It's where you were, and that's what took place. If when you look back at that, Ray, do you think, is there anything that and this is what I also would say. We're speaking very hypothetically here. In most cases, by the time it's all said and done, we're very happy that these negative things happened, that they did, that put us to where we are now. So all I'm asking
Mm.
is, is there a missing component that you'd wish you had back then that you think may have made a difference, like the communication, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh gosh,
Backward thinking for a second.
yeah. Not really. I don't tend to have regretful thoughts about the
Yeah, good.
past. I don't tend to. What I do is I see the benefit that I received in how it unfolded. I'll give you some clear examples, because these days I clearly understand that people who live exceptionally good lives, have a clear sort of vision, they have a purpose that they are aware of in their own thinking, they have a set of values that they are conscious of. They know what's important to them on a daily basis. Things like trust, teamwork, openness, belonging, whatever it would be. People who know their values. They make choices daily, hourly, minute by minute that align to those values or don't, or they choose not to. Now, if you're unconscious about what your values are, you end up choosing or agreeing to do things that don't sit very well with your values, but you only find out when it's all blown up afterwards. That's the thing. And so what I realised, for example, I have no values around status or material ownership and things like that. Money has very little value for me, but I lived in a life which was very affluent, very high cost, lived in a very high cost neighborhood, had a lot of material possessions of high status and brand. And so I was supporting a life financially that I didn't get any value from, that wasn't important to me, but I put a lot of energy into maintaining the image. And now I don't have to maintain that image. I haven't done for years, because I live in a way that's much more modest and frugal, that aligns with my values around status. And so the actual financial cost of my life is massively lower. And so I don't have any of the stresses of having to maintain an image around it, which I did
Yeah,
before. And I hope this makes sense, because it's
it
hard to
does.
explain.
It
So,
does, man. I'd lean into that. We have a lot, but we don't.
yeah. So what
Like
I've,
it's not. It's what I think money. I teach people how to have a better relationship with money, and
yeah,
how to
I'm
how to
not,
get right with money, and use it as a tool for what it's intended, and be an amplifier of positivity. And
correct. I'm not.
um,
I just want to make sure that anyone listening, I am not saying having
yeah,
money sucks. It doesn't.
yeah,
Having
no,
loads of money is really okay, but I don't value having more than I need.
yeah,
I have what I
enough.
need. I just have what I need to meet my needs and live my life according, to the values I have. I'd much rather be creating for others and supporting others than I'd rarely even go shopping these days. I don't consume much. I'm not a good
You said
consumer.
it. Money is a byproduct of all the things you want to do, all the
Yeah,
help that you wanna get. It's okay to change your family tree. You can do
yeah,
that
yeah,
along the way, and you can impact. But when you said that, man, is very very few entrepreneurs are in their Scrooge McDuck safe, swimming in their coins.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think you touched on that at the beginning with our um, with the book on the top five regrets. is
Mm.
is money's a great powerful tool, but it cannot it can't substitute for the peace that comes with just helping people and being part of the solution, not the
Yeah,
problem. And
yeah,
yeah, I'm with you. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. And Bronnie Ware confirmed that a lot of men, especially, said they died with way too much money. They literally had worked twice as much as they needed to, and they had a load of money that they could never have spent, even though they were dying. Obviously,
Yeah.
they just didn't. They could have worked half as much as they did and still had a good life.
They did that at the, a lot of times you hear too, man, their relationship with their kids were terrible.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Like,
exactly.
just like, why, I was on a podcast, I was a guest, but I grew up not knowing my dad. I had some really great male role models. And I always like
Yeah,
to make sure the world knows that. Because it leans into what I was going to talk to you about too on your coming up. But it's money is money, and then when you look at just those things of I would rather I try to create much time as I can to be around my kids and just
yeah,
be in their day, be in their life. And I have friends that work until their kids are gone to bed, then they go home.
yeah,
So they don't. Sometimes they struggle with the ability to interact, or
yeah,
they don't know how to interact. And which you also learn is some people had negative interactions with their kids, and they don't know quite how to parent or that vulnerable side of what that looks like. So
mm,
those exist.
yeah, yeah. I
It
hear you.
sounds like you found. I always like to remind people that you're a product of your influences and the five or so people you leave in, that you come in contact. It sounds like you had some really positive influences at that early age that helped
I
propel you
did.
into, yeah,
Yeah, I did. I was lucky to have just stumbled upon some very progressive and transformational thinkers who had really powerful visions of making society better for everybody, and they had thoughts about how that would look and how that could be done. And I was just very fortunate to be around people who thought like that because it made me stretch my own thinking in a way that I don't think I would have done if I'd stayed in the small town I was brought up in. I think that's one of the reasons I decided to take the sabbatical because I knew when I was swimming around in the murky waters of the destroyed life I was leaving, I thought if I stay in London, I'm just going to meet lots of people who think the same way as I think already. I'm not going to get any new insight because everyone will just be going, oh, you just find someone else and you carry on, or whatever you do, or this is what you can do to keep making your mortgage payments, or whatever it would be. I wanted to really bust my own limits of thinking beyond that. And I wasn't sure how. So I thought I need to go somewhere in the world where people think entirely differently. So I thought Asia was a good choice because of all the Eastern wisdom and understanding, which I had none of at all. So I thought that was a good pick.
it's I think sometimes too is it's about positioning ourselves. Part of that growth is positioning yourself in an uncomfortable environment
Yes. Yeah.
where
Yeah.
because you've had comfort for so long, and once that's disrupted is I on a smaller scale of someone who can't uproot and go to a foreign country, as I say,
Yeah.
join a gym full of strangers.
Yeah. No, I get you.
Go join a friend. Go sit in a cold river. Go sit in a cold tub full of water for 30 seconds, and just find some uncomfortable moments and some
Oh,
discomfort in
yeah.
your life, and you'll start finding clarity.
You
Getting
do.
uncomfortable, man. You start really
You did. I remember writing in one of the pages of the book the first time I ever had to take a cold shower in a straw hut on a beach, and I avoided it for about a week because I so didn't want to take a cold shower. I started to stink, and I thought, God, I
yeah,
can't. Eventually, I had to just go jump in and do it. It was horrible, but I soon got used to it.
yeah. It is. It's so much. You hear the term like choose your heart. Well,
Yeah,
that's it's easy to say that.
yeah,
Choose your heart will choose you. What I learned is a lot of people lack the plan or the path to be able because they're not maybe it's not as strong as you to say, hey, I know
right.
what I need. I need time alone, or I need to go do this, or maybe someone nudged you in that direction.
Yeah,
A lot of people are not going. So when you look at a smaller scale, folks, to speak to everyone, it's like getting uncomfortable might be If you're an introvert, it's going somewhere where it requires you to talk to people, or going, like I said,
Yeah,
choosing a new fitness routine and doing something that's hard or difficult. Um, because
yeah,
like you tell me, here you are in a foreign country taking cold showers, so you're double whammying yourself.
yeah, and not speaking the language and not
Not speaking the
understanding how
language.
things work and living in $2 a night hostels and stuff like this, which is something I'd never done.
Yeah.
It's, quite unbelievable.
Where did the title for the book come?
It just came to me when I was walking one morning. I was working on it and I was running. One of the things that I did was I started a fundraising foundation and I started raising money by running marathons, and I ran
Yeah.
5 in my 50s. And I just remember walking or running one morning and thinking, I just started musing on the title of the book, and I thought, Life Without a Tie. Life Without a Tie. Well, as soon as I had that set of words, I went, that's it. That's it. I just knew straight away. And when I got back to my room after that run, I went onto the domain registry and looked at lifewithoutattie.com, and it was free. It was available, and I registered it straight away. But it wasn't until about 8 years later that I actually got to use it on the website.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, it was quite an extraordinary insight, that one, because I'm really glad that I actually reserved the domain. I'm very
Yeah,
happy.
that
I,
is like it speaks. Cause I've had a job. I've had very few jobs. One of them was a uniform that required me to
yeah,
wear a tie. Outside of that, I haven't spent a lot of time in a tie.
yeah,
But I've also not been in a lot of those rooms that you have. So I work, coach those clients, talk to the suit wearers a
yeah,
lot, and so when you bring that perspective in of it's really an alter life. It's a
yes.
180 from what you're
It
from
was. It was.
that day to day.
It was kind of a bit of a play on the fact that I used to wear a tie as a
Yeah.
businessman, so that was without that tie. But it also, I wrote about in the book that it struck me that everyone's lives and identities are defined by four key things: your partner, your relationship with your partner or spouse, your career,
Mm,
the actual physical home that you live in, which in Britain a lot of people have pride around their houses, you see. And then the fourth one will be community of friends and family. So those are the four ties of your life. And I was in the situation when my marriage came to an end, my dad died, that all of those ties got cut at the same time. So if you're putting a tent on the ground and one of the tent pegs gets a bit
yeah.
loose, it's a bit unstable. Two, it's starting to shake. Well, when all four go, the tent's just flying off into space. It's gone. You don't have a tent anymore, and that was how it felt to me. So that's why I called it Life Without a Tie, because they were all removed at the same time.
That's I like those four things, and you're
Yeah,
right. Those are like four. Four. I always say you inventory your people you're around, but those are
yeah,
four things, folks. I would say hit pause and bump back for about 2 minutes, 2:30, couple 30 seconds worth, and listen to those again. And I
yeah,
think what I would challenge you to do is tie the book in Life Without a Tie, but do an evaluation of those four elements.
yeah,
Um, you'll hear in some circles we talk about faith, family, finance, and fitness.
yeah,
Similar to but yours is very those are drivers that are very deliberate, especially when we say spouse, when we talk about our home. In the States, home's a big deal too. It's like people work hard to get in. A lot of times you'll find that cars and homes are two people's most, because they cost
yeah.
the most. They're very significant.
It's the same in
Um,
England. It's the same. Yeah,
yeah, it speaks into when you can get into even just in general property ownership,
yeah,
and not living it, but like it's that you're starting to click off. You're headed in the right direction
yeah,
because you're. Um, I think, but I also go back, man. Your four little items there that you center around. Those have to be right in order for you to. You have to start clicking off one or two of them to find three and four sometimes.
yes, yeah, yeah. That's right.
And maybe
Yeah,
not in that particular direction, in a particular direction, but I think in order to put that package together, you got to get good with one or two of them, and then the other two really will fall into place and complement the package.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You mentioned, and as we wrap up here, tell me, and you brought it up, but you snuck it in, and Mr. Marathon Runner. So tell me, that is absolutely probably one of the most uncomfortable words that I say. I haven't ran a marathon yet, and so just for me to say the word probably is one of those uncomfortable. As much as I work out, my little bitty legs don't carry me well in a marathon. But tell me about that. Is that something you actively do a lot of, and tie in your Calling All Angels Foundation that
Yeah.
is part of that as well?
Yeah. How it started was that I left England in 2005. By the time I reached 2008, I'd been traveling for 3 years, and I'd been all over Thailand and Nepal and other countries in Asia. And I'd seen places and met people who really touched my heart, who brought me to tears. Like, I went to this orphanage in Nepal, and I organised a picnic for 60 young orphan kids. I saw how much joy and pleasure that brought, just spending $20 on a picnic for the afternoon for these kids. And I saw this elephant sanctuary in Chiang Dao in northern Thailand being run by a lady called 𝐿𝐻𝐫𝐿𝐻, who's founded it. And it was rescuing distressed elephants and elephants that were injured or blown up with landmines and stuff like that, and giving them a home in the wild. And all these things were running on donations. They weren't getting any funding from governments. They had no financial support. And I loved them. And I thought, God, you know what? There's so many people like me from other parts of the world who've got knowledge and skills and contacts. How could I help them? And I just carried on traveling, but I was always churning this in the back of my mind, how I could help them, and wondering what I could do to raise money. And then one day I went out for an evening and met a couple from England, and one of them was a guy called Matt Campbell. And so I was asking him about his life, and I said, "What do you do for sport and stuff?" And he said, "Oh, I run marathons." I said, "Really?" I said, "Tell me about that." He said, "Well, I've run 6." He was 10 years younger than me. He was 38 and I was 48. And I said, "Well, what's it like running a marathon?" And he described it to me. And as he was saying it, I just had this weird physical feeling going on in my body, and I could feel my energy tingling. And I knew there was something in what he was saying for me. I didn't know what, but I knew there was something, because I could feel how interested and excited I was listening to him and his stories about marathons. So I said to him, "Matt, I told you about those places that I've been to." I said, one of the things I want to ask you, I said, "Do you think I could run a marathon like you?" And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you look quite fit. Have you ever run before?" I said, "No, never, not even 100 meters. He said, "Look, I'll tell you what, you look pretty healthy. Why don't you come for a run with me tomorrow and we'll look at it? But if you stay, what I'm willing to do for you to help you with your project, if you stay in Chiang Mai for 6 months, I will train you to run a marathon and get you on the start line of your first one." And I thought that was an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
And so I said, we shook hands. I said, "Okay, Matt, I'll do it." And he said, "And what marathon do you want to run? What would be your choice?" And I said, "Well, it's funny you should ask, because 2 years before I'd gone to New York for a week to meet friends there. And I was walking around Manhattan, Central Park, and it literally happened to be coincidentally on the day of the marathon.
Yeah.
And there was a British woman athlete called Paula Radcliffe. She held the world record. And so we were both English, me and my friend. And we said, let's see Paula Radcliffe win the marathon. Let's stand by the finish and watch. It'll be really exciting. And so we watched it. We got carried away with the excitement of the crowd, etc. And my friend Angie turned to me and said, do you think you'd ever run a marathon? This was in 2007. I said, "No way, no." I said, but if I did, I'd want to run this one, because this is the most exciting marathon in the world. And so when Matt said to me, "What marathon do you want to run?" I remembered that 2 years before, and I said, "It sounds ridiculous, Matt. I don't think I'd ever get a place, but I'd really like to run the New York Marathon." He said, "Well, why don't you enter the ballot, to see if you can get a place, because millions of people apply for places." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And I put my name in the ballot. And within 4 days, I got a place. First time, immediately. And I took that as what I call now a confirmation signal. I talk a lot in my book about confirmation signals. When you're following a feeling and your instinct and inner wisdom is telling you that's where to go, and it gets confirmed with the universal intelligence that is the right decision for you, because There's clear confirmation is happening, and it's effortless. Confirmation signals usually come with some degree of effortlessness. It's what people call serendipity, luck, all that stuff. But I see it as a confirmation signal you're on the right track. And so I ran the New York Marathon 1st November 2009, and by then I'd managed to raise $15,000 in money from donations to take to the elephants and to the orphanage, and that's the first one. It was a good result on the first one. Yeah,
That's too cool.
yeah, it took me 2 years. That project took me 2 years.
Segue.
Yeah, 2 years.
That's you never run out of purpose.
No, I know. I had the
never-
time, yeah. I really felt like I was doing something I loved, and I was doing like Sir Ken Robinson, who was a great educator. He died a couple of years ago. Amazing man. He wrote the book about being in your element, what he called it, and he said, when you use your natural God-given talents, things you're naturally good at or strong at, and you operate in an area where you're passionate and you really care about the thing that you're doing, and these two things intersect like this, he said, if you're in that intersection where they overlap, you are in your element, and you could do that all day long, 24 hours a day. Never run out of energy. You love it. It's like it doesn't even feel like work, and that's exactly what it was like.
That is really freaking cool, man. That is a neat way to tie it all in. Other than selling your book, speaking on your book, doing those things, are any other projects you're working on that you want to tell us about?
No, my daily my daily job is I'm a leadership coach. So I'm working with people who lead businesses, teams, and helping them improve how they're leading. And that's my normal work. I mean, the book was a sort of side project, really, but I do some talks around it. But I'd like to do more, if I'm honest. But but no one knows about. There's 8 billion people in the world, and sort of nearly 7.98 billion don't know about me. And I'm certainly in America, no one's heard of me. So So I'm, I would like to do. As people find out slowly, maybe I will.
I mean, I think part of your leadership side is incorporating some of that story. I don't know of anybody. Either you're going. One of my friends talks about this. Either you've been through the storm, you're in the storm, or you're getting ready to go in the storm.
Yeah.
There is no. So your book it really helps people prepare for that storm.
Yeah.
Through our stories, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
We use your best coaches, man. We use our failures and setbacks and shortcomings and everything else to really help people overcome that. So that's very relevant, and I hear both sides of it. From the work I do, I see both sides of how that's a package for you, Ray. You're really good at how you convey the message.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do bring some of these stories to bear on with the people I work with, but mostly my focus of attention is on them, and they're doing their own work, and my role is very much to just hold the space for them to think things out for themselves. But they're good. Some good stories.
How do you want those folks to get in touch with you? They're looking to come alongside you and work on your leadership coaching.
Yeah, I built a website specifically for the book called lifewithoutatie.com. And partly the reason for that was because a lot of the people who bought the book when it came out said, we really want to see pictures of all these places that you went and all these run marathons and everything. And so on that website, there's loads of photographs from the stories in the book. Loads.
I'm scrolling, looking.
Yeah, and so that's one reason. And also, I thought if anyone wants a personal signed copy of the book, I'm happy. You can you can go to a page on that website, and I'll personally post one from my home to them. So, so that's easily the best way. But the book's on Amazon in America. I think most of the book sales are through Amazon. That's where most of them come.
Yeah. Yeah, that I'll make sure we bookmark that, man. And I think it's an amazing tie-in for the work that you do. And it's neat. Like I always find it interesting because my stuff kind of was a lifelong journey of different things. Some of mine started off in childhood, and it's always a different perspective, right? When someone comes in that has they find this, what could be a speed bump in the road, and what turns out to be a speed bump that is very significant at the
Yeah.
time, 40, and when you have to relearn, the life that you know, and you have to relearn when the life that you knew has changed.
Yeah.
So I think I think that's very unique in our conversation is you give a whole different perspective to folks, men, maybe, but women too, that are right there getting ready to step into that very, very negative moment in their life when they've never known it. And
Yeah.
you help navigate that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I understand what you mean. Yeah, I hope so.
Um, I hope as your story continues to evolve and those big projects, I hope you and I can catch back up. And
Yeah, I'd love that.
absolutely, you have been probably one of the most patient folks with me, and I don't want that to go overlooked.
That's
Just
all right.
trying for you and I to catch up in this conversation, and I appreciate your patience with me
No
and you
problem,
giving me
Jeff.
grace and letting me as I'm trying to work through my active schedule and finally finding this time and it, just like always, I'm sitting here kicking myself in the butt because I should have had this conversation way sooner, but I also think it's going to drip out and we're going to probably hit those people that need to just because of way
Yeah.
life kind of lines things
Yeah,
up for
super.
us.
When does this go out live?
We should, you should be, oh man, probably right at the 1st of April into March.
Oh, great. That's
I
pretty
got
soon.
3 episodes coming out a week right now.
Mm.
Um, I've got 3 episodes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm scheduled. I got probably another 6 episodes to edit, but I'm right at that last week of March on getting
Yeah.
everyone out.
Yeah,
So,
got you.
but to speak to that, if you got something that coincides with the release and we want to bring attention, you let me know and I can get it out whenever. I
No,
just
I'm good. I'm patient. Whenever it
yeah,
comes is fine.
yeah, no, we can. If you have anytime you have a launch or anything I can do to support you, because I
Thanks,
love
Jeff.
we're on like-minded missions with two in two very different parts of the world and probably different audiences in a lot of ways. But anything I can do to support you, I'd love for you to include me.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, if you're ever coming to London, let me know. I'll definitely meet you and talk to you.
Yeah, no, we'll have to figure out how we can make that happen. Do a live event sometime.
Great.
You have to
Great.
get an interpreter to interpret for me.
Brilliant.
All right, Ray. It's been good talking to you, brother.
Okay. Cheers for now.